Day in and day out, everyone had a role to play in feeding their village, whether it be from digging the soil, sowing the seeds, taking care of the plants and the livestock, harvesting and processing the food. We all had that connection with our food. And today we're disconnected, you know?
Good. Hi.
Hi guys.
Hi guys.
Today.
Good day, everyone. What issue are we here to talk about today?
So today we're discussing food insecurity on our island and the factors that inhibit easier access to food that is locally grown, nutritious, and affordable.
All right, so can you give us a brief overview of this issue?
Guam currently imports 90% of goods that are consumed by households, and according to data from GovGuam, an estimated $65 billion is spent on annual food imports.
Yeah, and like you said, Tati, because 90% of our food is imported, our food security situation is really fragile. It's really dependent on external factors, right? So things like economic disruption or things like supply chain disruption, even things like the pandemic, right? Like we saw in 2020. Our food security is all dependent on things that happen beyond Guam.
I just want to share more about the cost of food on Guam. So you can say that food on Guam is 15% more expensive than in Hawaii, but also 49% more expensive than the continental US. So with Guam's low per capita GDP plus the high prices of food, it's really difficult for our people to access and afford nutritious food.
And then we all know, right, that prior to World War II and all the land takings by the military, who took the most arable lands, the lands that were best for farming, Guam was self-sustaining with its food security situation, right? Rather than being 90% dependent, we were 90% independent with our food security.
And then for those that are like trying to start up farms, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission has land available for agricultural uses. But even with where those lands are situated, they're in places that are extremely difficult for like new farmers to really get their foot in the door, especially if they have to purchase all that new equipment to make that land usable.
So a fun fact about Guam's farmers is that there are 798 bona fide farmers. And a bona fide farmer is someone who is registered with Department of Ag, who grows fruits, vegetables, ornamentals, livestock, aquaculture products, any other agricultural products, and for the purpose of selling commercially. So Guam's population is currently about 170,000, and if you compare that number to how many bona fide farmers we have, it's less than 1%, and that really just shows that Guam currently doesn't have the capacity to provide the food for our island.
What is currently being impacted?
Because these imported foods are high in sodium, they're high in sugars, high or low in nutrition, they don't have what people need to live like a healthy, an active lifestyle, right? In places where there's a high amount of food insecurity, there's a lot of obesity or there's a lot of malnutrition, right? So that means that there might be people who aren't getting enough food, the malnutrition, and then there might be people that are getting enough food, but that food isn't good for them, right? So they might be eating things like Spam as much as we might like Spam, right? It's not the healthiest thing.
Yeah. Even due to the large amount of imports, the mental health of our community is impacted. So you can just imagine a family that's worried about what will they cook today, but also can they afford food in the grocery store? Will there be food in the grocery store that's healthy for their family? And all the choices that run through their mind that causes so much stress in order for them to have the basic human right to eat.
Another thing that's heavily impacted is the environment, right? Because when you think about the way that most of our goods get here, it contributes to a lot of waste and pollution. So when you consider things like the fuel that's needed to get these carriers and boats to the island, the single-use plastics that's used to package the goods, and then also the waste that is discarded when the produce gets both to customs and when it gets to the retailers on island.
So another thing being impacted is our culture and the connection to the land. Prior to colonization, we were a self-sustaining people. We lived off the land and the sea, and we knew how to take care of it. Day in and day out, everyone had a role to play in feeding their village, whether it be from digging the soil, sowing the seeds, taking care of the plants and the livestock, harvesting and processing the food. We all had that connection with our food. And today we're disconnected, and that's one of the relationships that needs to be restored.
That was really good. That's poetic.
Period.
Eva. Are you gonna submit that? You should
Nolan
should write that on and submit it. Like.
Got it. Alright. Who has the power to make significant changes for the issue of food security?
The Department of Agriculture has significant power to support and promote local farmers and the products that they create. We also look at the governor and the Guam legislature also hold significant power to influence policy or to create new laws that help alleviate some of the issues and some of the problems faced by our local farmers.
Another agency that has significant power is the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. They have the ability to support Chamorros who lack land, especially for farming. 33% of Gov Guam property is used for Chamorro Land Trust land.
Okay, so now that we've talked about the issue of food insecurity and you've given us context, what are some recommendations or solutions that you all propose?
So I propose a solution that would redirect the benefits from the SNAP program or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and pretty much encourage those low-income families that benefit from this government assistance into a double dollars program. This is similar to what happens in Wisconsin, where farmers are able to receive twice as much profit because they're receiving income from buyers who have this initiative. So what I want to say is that it's a two-part program, pretty much where one, you would have to direct the benefits from SNAP into the EBT cards, where a certain amount is for them to buy produce from local farmers that can be in grocery stores, farmers markets, or roadside stands. And the second part is to provide local farmers with the equipment and devices necessary to accept EBT payments. And those are pretty much called point of sale devices. And because they're local farmers, it is part of the EBT program to provide these equipment for free if you are eligible farmers, if you sell at a farmer's market. So there's other ways that we can provide for these equipment to get them started.
No, I love that.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say more. You were just like, you were just like, no, I love that.
Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, mine is perfect. Sit down.
I think this is a great idea because when we look at, like Nolan, you were saying earlier, how in places with like really bad food insecurity, we see cases of malnutrition and obesity at the same time. And so with SNAP, like expanding that to local farmers and their products, we can ensure that there is a more equitable dispersion of like those high quality like goods for all members of society.
Yeah, and I think it's a win-win for the families. You get access to local produce, and also for the farmers, you're bringing in profit.
Yeah, I really like the idea, especially like providing farmers with the tools that they need, right? The tech that they need to just deal directly with customers or people that might want to buy. You can just go straight to them and you can use your EBT card. You don't have to worry about, is there stuff going to be at the supermarket? I think one thing is, because SNAP is like a federal program, I don't know if the government or public health, right, GovGuam can say that a certain amount of SNAP benefits have to go toward local farming. But maybe one thing we can consider is supplementing the supplement, right? And like using local funds maybe, or finding another grant that could support.
I agree, yeah. Because SNAP is a federally funded program, it's pretty much up to our local government to administer and organize how the program is enacted on our island. So if we were to have additional benefits or even to redirect whatever funding is in it, it's up to public health and overall GovGuam to figure that out.
Can I ask, like, how simple is this process for a farmer to acquire the point of sales equipment? Because I know that's one thing, because a lot of our farmers are, older, and it's another thing to also train them to use the devices.
I do see that as an obstacle. I didn't do much research about how easy it is to access these devices, just that I know that farmers are eligible to receive this equipment for their roadside stands or even at farmers markets. But yeah, I think they will also need training, not because they're accepting EBT cards, but these devices are similar to accepting debit card and credit card payments instead of just cash.
I think that's also really good because then it just like broadens the amount of people that can be reached by local farmers.
Yeah.
Maolek. Okay.
Maolek.
So my solution is for GDOE to do a partnership with local farmers to implement local produce in school meals, replacing like those fruit cups or just canned fruits with like bilimbinis, you know? And then it would go on to another food group, like vegetables, and then protein, and then the carbohydrates, you know? And then it could also start off with the grade level, whichever these are probably high schoolers. This is also a win-win because we're feeding our kids, the future, more nutritious food. And then we're also supporting the agriculture industry and the farmers who will provide this food. We're expanding the labor force.
I feel like this would be a really good step to getting people out of the habit of eating processed foods because, you know, when you grow up eating these things, it's kind of hard to take yourself out of it. But if they're exposed to this somewhere that they spend like 7 hours a day in, it'll be a really good way to introduce it to them.
Yeah.
I think it might be difficult if you were to target DOE as like a pilot school for this, simply because like with DOE, they really like it when things are, you know, like board-wise, like region-wise, like every school gets affected the exact same way. Mm-hmm. So there's no disparity between different schools. Like maybe a suggestion is start in like a private school where they have a little bit more freedom in like who their like catering provider is, and working with them to build up that revenue that you need in order to expand the farm so that you can take on larger clients like this, like the public schools.
Just wanted an FD.
Yeah, man, the food there.
He says,
Not
us
healthy.
first.
I feel like Kat mentioned one way that we can build the agricultural industry to be able to supply all these students with different food groups, and it was starting with one.
But when you think of like the sheer volume, like the number of students, this is every day of the school year for every single student in every single school. Like it's just a lot for every day.
So you're suggesting a step before
Going to the public schools. So like even starting with one school and seeing if it works there, and then growing that to like more schools, and then that's like more clients, that's more money. And then eventually when like a solid farming industry has been set up, then like taking it to public schools. And then I think from there, it can just be like entrenched.
I think another thing I was thinking of why also GDOE is because it's important, especially like for avocado season. You know, we have a surplus of avocados, and it's not just farmers who contribute to giving avocados, you know. Some of it's like local households with like 2 avocado trees that produces so much waste that goes to the ground. And if they could just harvest that and like donate it to the farms, and the farms could provide it for the schools, I think that's another way to implement the community building and seasonality knowledge of what's grown here. Yeah.
I know that catering public schools is a very lucrative like business point. Like a lot of people like fight for those bids for who gets to like feed the students because that is like a guarantee. Do you think that like even if you were to incorporate a little bit with that, would you have to work at competitive prices? I think DOE has to go with like the cheapest or the most financially sound option. And so that's why Sodexo has maintained itself as like the provider. Would this be something you work out with Sodexo or with DOE to ensure like maybe a non-competitive part of the lunch program?
Well, because farmers won't be processing the fruit, I think it would also go through Sodexo or whoever's providing the meals.
Oh.
Yeah.
So sourcing ingredients.
Yeah, it's the ingredients supporting the farms, and then maybe that could expand the business into processing and like value-added products.
Yeah, like Laz said, right, that DOE has to, because of procurement or whatever, they have to choose the cheapest option, right? But maybe we need to rethink that, right? Are we cutting corners with school lunches, but then we're spending more money on things like healthcare because kids are not as healthy as they should be if they were eating local foods, right? So maybe that needs to be revamped when DOE goes to consider the next meal contract for the schools, right? They need to maybe add a requirement that this percentage of food needs to come from local sources, local ingredients, right? Maybe that's a part of the requirement. And even if it's a little more expensive, it's long-term savings, right? It's community health. It's better.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thanks.
Okay, so my solution is community gardens in villages. I think this can be a program that is established by the Mayor's Council of Guam, unique to each village. The mayors can identify regions within their village that is not currently being used, but they can refit it into a community garden wherein they can hire local farmers to help upkeep the growing of like local plants, local fruits and vegetables, but then opening that up also to villagers who can volunteer their time in these gardens, like maybe after school or in the morning before they go to work. And if they do volunteer their time, or if they're like a member of the community garden, that when it's time to like pick the produce or to get the product, that they're able to also get a portion of that share because they did help out.
What would be funding these community gardens?
I can see it working with the Mayor's Council of Guam or maybe in the Department of Agriculture, splitting the cost. Maybe like Mayor's Council of Guam can like contract the hiring of these farmers. So it's like supplemental income for the farmers in addition to their like main farm. And they can also be the ones to provide like the area. And then the Department of Agriculture or other nonprofit organizations could also assist in providing like the seeds or the equipment, things like that can help ensure this.
I think there might be an issue with having established farmers right now to do this, because we're already having issues maintaining our own workforce and getting the right wage or the proper wage we should be getting because of how much work we do. I think this is a good opportunity to collaborate with farmers to do workshops for the volunteers so that they could be the ones managing these gardens.
Or maybe not just volunteers, but hiring people from the village, like high school students that have time after school. You could actually hire them, and this would be their first source of income, or retirees.
I like that. I think especially like collaborating early on in like the beginnings of these with like farmers to help get all of that knowledge, that information spread. Introducing people from the villages to like farmers, I think, is a good way to just put a face to like another place where you can go to seek out like those kinds of produce. So rather than thinking first thing comes to mind to buy groceries is to go to like Payless, like I now know like Tun Fred, who's like really good at growing like peas, and I'm gonna call him up instead.
Are there any regulations that you think would apply to the community gardens? Because I know that other models have it to where like community members rent out a space to plant in, but I don't see that being the case with this because it's a community effort. But yeah, just any regulations that you have in mind.
I want to shy away from making it too much regulation, just because I think it really takes away from that cultural aspect of farming, right?
Did you consider utility costs? I guess access to water, power, pest control?
I'm not sure if the mayor's office has already a discount on water, but I think with the community garden, I think this also works in tandem with them because then you can claim it as agricultural land and then also have like that decreased cost of water. Or is that not?
No, there's like a certain acreage too of how much. There's a set amount.
Oh, okay.
I also need to be bona fide to get that discount.
But with that discount, it has to be for commercial use?
This farmer use.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure about commercial. No.
Well, I mean, if those are like the current systems in place, I think that's something that we can work on with like sitting down with the Department of Agriculture and being like, I know that you give out like the certification for bona fide farmers. Like, can we have a separate place for villages that want to opt into this kind of program? And then as far as other utilities go,
I just brought up pest control because I'm like, villages, we got boonie dogs, chickens, cats.
Pigs.
Yeah. There's a lot of things. I mean,
Yeah, I don't really know.
I mean, there's a lot of pigs in Agana Heights, and so what the mayor does is like he gives out pig traps. So I think like as far as pests, like pest control, I think they're pretty set on trying to limit the pests in their village. Like they won't know if there's a pack of wild dogs unless someone calls in like, hey, I got mauled by a pack of wild dogs. In the same way, the community garden would be like something that people are kind of looking after and being like, hey, mayor, we are getting like hella pigs up in this. Like, what can you do about it? And I'm pretty sure that the mayor wanting to ensure the safety of the village is going to do something.
Yeah, I really like the idea. I think it's a good way to build capacity, right? So when Kat was talking about like not using existing farmers because they're busy with their farm, maybe like the Department of Agriculture could hire people with that technical knowledge, right? So So like if they know the seasons and they know the proper techniques, then they can train, right? And they can go to different villages each week, right? And train. So you don't need like to hire so many. You can just have one person that kind of rotates around. I think we should use the schools, right? We know that DOE is the largest user of government land, I believe. And there's already some school gardens, so right, we can just like partner up with DOE to turn those into community gardens. I like the village idea because it does like expanding that one village, one product thing, right? You know, Hoggett has Mango Festival,
Yeah.
Talofofo has Banana Festival. Yeah, we can do it for like, maybe we can do like a one village, one golai thing where they grow like they grow green beans in Zotnia, or I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really good idea to also like, you know, sort of make it something that is that you as a person in your village is like proud of. You know, like rallying behind, like, you know, like you have friends from Agate that rally behind the mango like so hard. Like, can imagine the same thing if this becomes like a one village, one golai. Like,
And it's really like writing relationships, right? Because we're making people grow the food that they're gonna take home, that they're gonna eat, right? So you grow that, and then you grow even the community, the people to people of it. If you're learning how to farm from your peers or from the mayor, there's just that stronger connection, and then the food is being spread out throughout the village. So it's really good at fixing a lot of the relationships that we've lost since we started importing lots of food.
One thing I do want to note is that I really don't want the community gardens to put local farmers out of business either. I don't want the community garden to grow into a capacity where it's like it's able to feed everyone, because then it's like, why do we even have local farmers? Like, what are they going to contribute that we don't already get in our own villages? But then expanding the community gardens to like now villages can host like farmers markets in their own village, right? Since people are already associating this area with a garden, like it would be so much easier to set up like the farmers within their own village to set up there and sell their produce right there as well.
I'll be honest, I don't think that's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's an issue of the community gardens overtaking what the farmers produce. Just with,
Yeah.
But
She said no
Yeah,
contest.
we need that.
sorry,
No concept.
not like
She's
that.
like, you know how hard I work?
And you're gonna tell me to use gardens?
These kids are gonna, yeah.
Kat said you can't compare me, you can't compare. Nolan, okay, next.
Shotgun citrus for Jigo up if this
Okay, she
poster.
was
I was gonna
Citrus.
Yeah, Jigo
say,
does.
yeah, the
Citrus?
citrus festival. It's
Oh.
actually tangerines, calamansi, lemon
Only one, not citrus.
No, citrus.
Not groups.
No, citrus, the whole category.
It is the whole citrus though. I've been to that festival. It's really nice.
Okay, so my solution is to limit imported produce. So this would mean that imports of goods would reflect what is in season on island and the availability of produce. This would ensure that less than 90% of produce is being imported throughout the entire year or at any given time. It would also supply households with more nutritious and healthier food, and in turn limit the likelihood of famine in the occurrence of like a disaster, like we mentioned the pandemic earlier. So this would have to go through the point of contact, which is customs and quarantine. And I just wanted to stress that the mission of this agency is to improve trade facilitations and protect the people of Guam. So I'm calling upon them with this solution in mind to enact that mission.
I think this is such a great idea too, because this reduces food waste, especially if avocados in season. Everyone's always trading around avocados. You know, we got different sizes, variations that we grow here, and also limiting carbon dioxide emissions too.
Mm-hmm. It would require like everyone, wholesalers, retailers, even just individual consumers, to look to local providers before they outsource.
I think one good thing about it, Tati, is that it doesn't necessarily need more resources to do this, right? Because I think even with things like the plastic bag ban, they put an import ban on it, right? So you just can't import it. So with this, it's as simple as saying you can't import this kind of thing. So there's not really a lot of money that needs to be spent, right? You might need to hire more, I don't know, people to check what's coming in, but it doesn't require a lot of resources, and it might have a really high impact on increasing our food security, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would boost the agriculture industry, because once people see that there is a high demand for these things, they're gonna feel a little more welcome to engage in this type of like career path.
I think this also opens up an avenue for people in the community who don't necessarily want to be a full-time farmer. There could also be like a mini bona fide farmer certification, you know, for when like the season comes around, especially if they have these like this amount of trees in their backyard and they have all this excess, you know, this could go to the markets, grocery stores.
Yeah, I think you can have a person that actually goes around to the farms and be like, this is what in season for, and then bring it to the grocery store. So the middleman.
Yeah. The hope that I have with this solution is that even if we cannot provide everything that is required to sustain the island, that before we look to like the continental US, we would also try to source from Micronesia, Oceania before we go that far from home.
I think there's also just an issue with that because Guam doesn't export produce. We do get, like from Rhoda, we do get imports, but we're not contributing to the economy because of the organic gap.
Okay.
Right?
I know that I'm always like waiting for
Can I
people to bring in
That
like,
too.
I
Sorry.
know, because you went to the Jones Act.
Yeah,
right?
sorry.
And then also, it would be harder to, the only things that can come into Guam are things that are on top of God do this, or shit would do stuff.
I didn't even think of that. I just wanted to mention it because I'm familiar with people like waiting for, let's say like fish from Rhoda or taro from Palau. So it was just like in a perfect world.
Yeah. I agree though. It would be so nice if we could just regionally disperse all our our regionally grown produce.
But that's a bigger problem.
Sorry.
For another episode.
Back to decolonization.
Who's the director now?
For the next
Cat
episode,
fixing.
we're gonna form a trade union. The United Micronesia Emirates. Okay. Any more comments for this one? Okay, good job, Tati.
Who's next?
Yeah, so I'm proposing a marketing campaign. I think the Department of Agriculture and the Guam Economic Development Authority, GIDA, should undertake this marketing, like promotional campaign, right? We need like branding, we need like informational charts that say this is so much healthier than this thing that's being imported. And also we just need to make people like feel good about buying local produce, right? When you're buying local, you know that the money is going to someone like a fellow community member that it's their livelihood. So I think, yeah, just restoring that relationship with people and their food like we're really discussing. Yeah.
I think I have like 2 comments. I think GVB would also be a good agency to collaborate with this because they can also not just cater it to the locals, to the visitors that are coming to our island. And then another thing too with the marketing, I think it's really important to show how a lot of nutrients are lost when they're processed and frozen. So that's a good way to promote health through local produce.
Yeah.
Going off what Kat said, I think like once we start bringing in like nutritional differences between locally grown food and food that's imported in, that also becomes a matter of public health. And so like that's an alternative funding source for that specific type of like ad campaign. Those specific types of materials can be done through public health. I know that in Kosrae, their public health department also created an ad campaign to promote like locals to eat a certain type of banana because that banana had a certain vitamin that was deficient in a lot of people because of their diet.
Oh, wow.
And so it's already been done in like these specific islands where, you know, our government does step in when we see like the health is compromised.
Yeah, and funding, right? Because it's so connected to public health. I think the Healthy Futures Fund works for this, or even, I don't know what public health money we might have, right? Yeah, and hotels too, Kat. Hotels need these kind of things, right? To make even tourists feel like they're contributing to local farming.
Yeah, local support, yeah. I do want to say too that restaurants and hotels right now are actually supporting farmers, and you don't see much of that being advertised, and I think that's important because it'll make locals want to go eat there more because it's like, hey, this was grown here, you know? Yeah.
I think also developing like the campaign even further and having it into like working with DOE to have it a part of like a curriculum, especially with like young students, like in elementary, like we look at our dependency on imports today was really caused by that lack of education around farming that we had when we were younger. And so changing it with that next generation through a campaign like this, I think can really shape the future generation of consumers.
Farmers too, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Our farmers.
That's a good idea to also do what we mentioned before about getting people out of their normal eating habits. It's kind of like showing them, okay, this is what we have, and this is also what you can do with it. Because if they're not used to cooking with local or fresh ingredients, they have to learn from somewhere,
Yeah. I know the University of Guam, their nutrition program and their 4-H program actually do community outreach where they, one, bring local ingredients, but also show you some recipes where these local ingredients are either the main ingredient or substitutes to familiar recipes like lemai flour, start using banana more, and just incorporating local ingredients into your everyday diet.
And it can be simple like that, right? Like there's a poster at Payless and you scan the QR code and it's like, with this, with this fruit, this vegetable, you can make all these local dishes, right?
That's a good point too, because Payless does have already those recipes on YouTube, but they can incorporate the local produce that they actually sell there.
So I propose a solution, which would be a tri-partnership between local farmers, Mayor's Council of Guam, and the Guam Department of Education, just to promote village food banks. And I was looking more at meal pack programs so that students after school can bring home some of the produce in boxes so they can have snacks and meals when they go back home. Because a lot of students are coming from families that might not be able to support them over the weekend and provide them 3 meals a day. So it's just preparing them and giving them the necessary resources to bring to their homes, not just for the children to eat, but also the rest of their family. If these programs are coming from the school itself, it can also come from the Mayor's Council to provide families that might not have students that go, or children that go to school yet. They might be toddlers, but just to have more access to families that need local produce and giving farmers more demand for their products.
I love this.
Yeah,
I think it's great, Muturwan. We saw the success of the food distribution, the commodity distribution during the pandemic, right? Where people really came out because it really helped support their families' food security. So if we do this with local foods, it only makes sense. Like we're giving it directly to those that might need it most.
Yeah.
And then it's coming from our local farmers. Yeah.
I think this also goes with Nolan's marketing campaign because it's reaching the community via the mayor's office, so the mayors could also have those publicity signs for local produce and what they're actually getting in their boxes and how it's contributing to the necessary nutrition that especially kids need.
Yeah.
What about the long line for the food commodity? That blocks the lane, the traffic.
Get two
Got the mayor's
points.
office.
Yeah.
You
Or
can
four.
spare 10
Don't you figure
10
that out?
minutes, okay, for the health of our children.
They block up the whole right lane.
Hey, don't act like they can't.
They got this.
You're okay with the power cut? Oh, they can take 4 lanes of traffic.
Yeah.
You can't sacrifice one for a food
Yeah,
bank?
for real.
What the
They don't want to give me
Already
priorities.
win the war.
It's not very inafa'maolek of you.
Mr. Governor.
Okay, Maolek, good solution.
Wow.
So my solution is for the legislature to make an amendment to the already existing Land Conservation Act. This is going to highlight important agricultural lands. I would want them to commit to protecting agricultural lands, diversifying agriculture, and promoting the self-sufficiency of agriculture, and assuring availability of agricultural lands. I think this goes hand in hand with the Chamorro Land Trust land, making it easier for them to assess suitable and accessible land for farming, because one of the issues with Chamorro Land Trust agricultural leases is that most of the land isn't good for farming, very rocky. The source of water is also very limited.
I like this. I think it's important to at least have this established so that moving forward, I mean, it's easy to say we support farmers, but is what we're doing just saying it enough? There needs really looking at the steps that our local leaders have made it to ensure that farmers are supported, looking at the type of land that they have access to, is not the best. Like righting that wrong, and really thinking with farmers like at the forefront and what they need, not just like giving them land. Like it's not just like another business where you can just give them a piece of property.
Exactly. Yeah, like it takes years to build your soil, you know, and if the soil is rocky, you know, you're gonna have to input raised beds. And a lot of the farmers are starting out, they don't have the equipment nor the manpower to carry out these like raised beds, infrastructures on the farm. I think also this aims to protect any more land takings from the military as well, because a lot of the lands they do take is good for growing. From a personal perspective, it's very discouraging when I was doing this because my goal is obviously to have a farm, you know, and you know, like when you talk to farmers, you already know that, yeah, there's just like a million other hoops that we have to go through. And if we start by protecting what we have here and designating that for food for the community, yeah, it's just important.
One thing that I really like about this is that once it's established as important agricultural land, it can no longer be used for anything else.
Yeah.
So my solution, infrastructure for value-added products, really aims to combat two of the issues that I feel many local farmers have to face with their products. The first one is having to compete with the prices that are set by like these larger corporations. And the second is having to deal with all of the excess product that they might have. Value-added products just simply means like a product that's taken to another level other than just picking it off. So this can be like as simple as like getting lemai and cutting it into slices and then packaging it that way. Or it can be completely creating a new product like lemai flour, right? And one of the issues that we see with farmers selling their produce to like grocery stores is that they're competing with these overseas corporations that have like, you know, thousands upon thousands of acres of land and workers, so they can afford to keep their prices low when selling it to our grocery stores. But because the price of those like products are already so low from like overseas, like farmers have to cut their products down in order to make sure that it's competitive and at least they're like selling something. But with a value-added product, what that does is it helps to justify a jump in price. So if it's something like processing it a little bit more, like, yeah, even taking lemai and then cutting it, that's something that you can say like now it's not like this much per pound, but it's gonna be a little bit more because there was extra work done. What we can recommend is that the Department of Agriculture, since they're there to help farmers, is to purchase that equipment and have it rentable to farmers or have farmers able to use it if it's free or available or something like that.
I think, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Were you going to say something?
That's it.
Whoa. I know. No, I just think like one obstacle with valued added products is there's a whole other health certification aspect. And actually, we just got 6 professors and teachers like from GOG and GCC to be certified to create value-added products, and they all like had a separate distinction with like canning, jamming, and like etc. So
yeah,
Jamming. Which one's that? Which one's that?
the jamming.
that's
We
it.
already know how to do that.
Professor,
Okay, Tati.
it's the professor that knows how to jam.
Teach us how to
Who's
jam.
that?
Which professor is that?
Get in that class, you're like, oh, this is where we jam, huh?
Oh, wrong jamming.
That's at the Muay Thai over there.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. Also, look, yeah, like incorporating these kinds of knowledge or these kinds of certifications inside like the university or GCC really also helps to diversify the fields that you can have with a degree in agriculture, which entices people because now there's like a new market. So yeah, working with the University of Guam to provide that kind of knowledge.
Yeah, and any new way for people to enjoy locally grown foods is great, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's already a demand for products that are value-added products. Like if you look at small mom and pop stores, people want local food that's already prepared. So you can look at banana that's already in coconut milk, fresh tuna that's already scaled and filleted. So people are willing to pay the price for not doing the labor, but having local food on their table.
I think this also contributes to the growing agriculture industry on Guam. It's such a necessary knowledge, especially if we want to get rid of imported processed food.
And I think it's a natural progression in the state of like providing food for ourselves. It's like for so many years we've been able to create or like, you know, use what we've had like directly into dishes. And then now with like more complex like our lives get, and the more complex or the more like diverse the island gets itself, like different people have different tastes. Like this is the next step to help support that growing population.
I like how you mentioned that this could add like an extension to the agricultural industry. So maybe we could get to a point where it's not just allowing farmers to use this equipment or the infrastructure, but getting people and training people to do that themselves as a job. Like you would hire people to take in this excess produce and then turn it into something that can be sold later on.
New industry.
Mhm.
So now that we've discussed all of your solutions, let's decide, do you feel like we need to eliminate any or condense any of them? What do you feel like are the strongest, or if you guys have any faith?
I think community garden and food bank can be condensed. I think they're similar enough, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
they can be in the
vills.
In the vills, yes. There you go. Can I just put it together like this? There you go. So we can still see. I'm thinking this and this, right? Limit imported produce
Yeah,
and then
start
infrastructure
there.
Because then
value
you're
added
growing
products.
local. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah. So rather than just like the raw produce, it can also be like the value added produce too. Like, no more jam.
Oh, wait. The limit produce,
Limit,
right?
not marketing.
Oh, yeah.
He's making room.
Oh. No, I thought you were going to move it to the left. So I was like, wait.
Get rid of it.
No, I'm just like,
You want to get up here?
take it off. Either take it off or...
Next week you can get up here, okay?
Don't touch Nolan's solution, guys. Just leave it there.
We're not doing campaigns anymore.
Oh, now you're covering up. No, I'm just-
What else?
yeah, no more campaigns. That's every week, right?
We love campaigns here.
Yeah.
What is
No,
the?
yeah.
I think the rest of these are all
Individual.
are by themselves. I think marketing campaign is like
Overarching.
yeah,
like-
this is all of them. Like
It's all campaign.
you know,
So as a group, just looking at this, you feel like these are all inafa'maolek and realistic.
Mhm.
That's your consensus.
yes.
Again.
Cool. Okay. So why should our leaders care or pay attention to the proposals you submitted to us today?
I think like food security has always been an important issue, but I think for the regular person living on Guam, it wasn't really that visible until just like this last pandemic, where there was the fear of like the closing of shipping lanes or like the decrease in things that were available at our local grocery stores, or even like the decrease in ability to go to a grocery store. I think all of that really shows us just how dependent we've gotten on imports and how we've really been neglecting such a key aspect of what made living on Guam so unique, which is that the island really does provide. Like looking at the word Guahan, like it means like to have. And that's really because like Guam literally has everything that you need.
Going off of what you said about the pandemic, that really showed us how people think of our farmers here, as like the backup sources of food. Presently, we've had that fear of no eggs in the market, so people were turning to farmers, and I think we need to change that narrative of going to grocery stores first to actually going to the farmers first, because they should be our primary source of food.
I agree. I think looking at like just farming in Guam in general, like is so tied to our community. Like that has what has gotten everyone through. That's what got our manamkut like to survive through those wars. And even into like those years after, like I know a lot of people, look at farming not just as like, a hobby, but something that really does like provide for them. Like my grandpa growing, like when he was like he had like 9 children and he had one job, only person working. And like he had a farm and he told all his kids, like he taught them all how to farm. And he said that it was like that reliance on their farm that gave them all like a healthy diet, that kept them from like having to like, ask for money from other people. Like it provided for him when like other things didn't.
One thing that was a clear indicator for me growing up about like our separation or like the tether of our relationship to the land was like, for example, my older aunties and uncles, right? They would always tell us stories about like, oh, when I was younger, I didn't eat French fries. I just put the lemai on the barbecue pit and added salt. right? And then when you speak to your aunties and uncles or family members that are a little bit younger, they tell you about like Spam Kelaguen and tuna in the can and things like that. So you can just really see how reliant we became as a people on imported goods.
And I think it's important to start changing those childhood experiences, especially with some of the solutions we suggested today, to have it more visible in schools, in your villages, in your communities, and where children are actually growing up living off the land and restoring their relationship with not just taking from the land, but being able to give back to their community and to the products that we're resourcing from.
Food is just, it's the starting point for so many other things that are important in our life, right? Doing the things you enjoy, living a healthy lifestyle, all begin with you having the nutrients, with you having the health, like you said, to do these things that you enjoy, to do these things that are going to grow our island as a whole.
I think it's also important that our local leaders support who's going to feed the community and how we're going to feed the community, because like no farms, no food, you know?
I think it's also worth pointing out that like if we're going to support any type of farmer, support our own, you know? Like why are we looking to other people to provide what we can ourselves? And maybe we can't provide everything that's needed to sustain the whole island, but it should always be us first if we're going to support anybody.
And it's important for our government to support our farmers because farmers are a part of our community. Farmers also have families that they need to support financially in order for them to thrive. So being able to give them access to land that is suitable for farming, and then also creating that demand and that need for products that come from Guam that are locally grown and are given to families that need it the most is just a whole cycle of us giving back to the land, but also our relationship to each other and having our government support all these relationships.
To the leaders of Guahan, we, the Department of Maolek, believe that food security is foundational to community health.
The lack of access our people have to affordable, nutritious food is untenable. We are calling on our leaders to consider the following proposals.
To invest in local farmers and infrastructure for local food production.
To help public schools partner with farmers to use local produce in school meals.
To expand SNAP allowances for food to be used at local farmers markets.
To establish community gardens and local produce food banks at village mayors' offices.
To preserve our arable land by establishing and designating protected agricultural zones from industrial development.
For thousands of years, our connections to the land and sea sustained our people.
It is our responsibility to restore and maintain this connection, ensuring future generations do not inherit scarcity, but abundance.
Hafaday, I'm Siobhon, the director of the Department of Maolek, and the voice you hear behind the camera in each episode. We'd love to hear from you. Thoughts? Opinions? Disagreements? Like and comment below, tell us what you think, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode.